Hello and welcome to WION Live Broadcast from London. I'm Ollie Barrett, and coming up we've got the latest on stories developing around the world. First up, the headline. Austria returns to a national lockdown as protests against new coronavirus restrictions spread across Europe. Beijing refuses to engage with international concern over tennis star Peng Shuai's well-being, insisting it is not a diplomatic matter. Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko accuses the EU of refusing to discuss the fate of 2,000 migrants who remain stranded at the border with Poland. A vehicle ploughs through barricades and into a Christmas parade, killing 5 people and wounding at least 40 others in the US state of Wisconsin. The Taliban issues a new religious guideline banning the country's television channels from showing soap operas featuring women actors. And Alexander Zverev wins a second ATP Tour Finals title after a straight sets win over defending champion Daniil Medvedev. Europe is facing a resurgent wave of COVID-19 infections, and tougher restrictions and vaccine rules are leading to protests across the continent. The Netherlands has seen 3 straight nights of protests against COVID restrictions. On Sunday, riots broke out with angry mobs clashing with police. 5 police officers have been hurt and 64 people detained in 3 provinces. The latest unrest was sparked after the government imposed a 3-week partial lockdown. Strict measures were put in place after the Netherlands reported a record spike in COVID cases. Bars and restaurants are not allowed to stay open post 8 p.m, and crowds are banned at sporting events. Protests also broke out in Belgium. Around 35,000 people took to the streets in Brussels to protest against restrictions imposed by the government to curb a rise in cases there. Protesters and police clashed, with demonstrators throwing smoke bombs and fireworks. Police used tear gas and water cannons in some cases to try and disperse demonstrators. Belgium tightened its COVID restrictions last week, mandating a wider use of masks and enforcing work from home for many. A COVID pass is compulsory to eat in a restaurant or go to a theatre. Belgium's recorded over 26,000 total deaths due to the virus and has one of the highest cases per capita rate in the European Union.
We want our freedom, and being injected by something that's not tested well, being not able to work where you want to work, to be where you want to be, that's not where we stand for. That's not freedom, that's not where we live. We live in West Europe, and we just want to be free like we were before.
I'm here to come in I don't know how to explain it, but I'm here to fight the how do I call it? You know, it's discrimination. People get discriminated because the QR code. You know, people are vaccinated cannot enter some buildings because they only had one vaccine. This is the main reason we're here. You know, people get discriminated, and we don't want this.
But Austria is the first Western European country to reimpose a full national lockdown. It'll be in place till December the 12th, but will be reassessed in 10 days. All non-essential shops have to close. People have been asked to work from home. Schools will only be open for children who require face-to-face learning. Christmas markets and hotels will be shut. The new measures, including a vaccine mandate, have also been met with protests in Austria. Over 40,000 took to the streets of Vienna to demonstrate against the government's restrictions. Hospitals in the region of Salzburg and northern Austria are struggling to deal with the rising patient load. For an update on Germany, we can get the latest from there from WION correspondent Ryan Thompson, who's in Frankfurt.
Many months ago, the Chancellor Angela Merkel said that there was no way that Germany would move toward compulsory vaccinations, even as we saw neighboring countries like France and Italy begin to require compulsory vaccinations for certain professions. So, of course, talking about public sector workers, or notably those who are working in hospitals or care homes. Germany said they would not follow such a step, but now as they're facing one of the fastest upticks that we've seen in COVID-19 cases really in the entire story of this pandemic, well, the entire narrative is changing very quickly. Germany is worried about the situation they're facing at hand and looking across the border at Austria, which did not push for vaccinations as hard as some countries did, and now thinking it might be a bit of a different story. But so far, the official line, at least from the Bundestag and from the Chancellery here in Germany, is that is not on the books just yet, but many local leaders and some in different of Germany's 16 states are beginning to think about this type of requirement, especially in those regions where the vaccination rate is so low, like Saxony and Bavaria.
Tensions remain high at the Poland-Belarus border. Thousands of migrants are caught up in intensifying geopolitical dispute. Some reports suggest that Belarusian forces are still ferrying migrants to the frontier. The Polish Prime Minister has warned the migrant crisis may be a prelude to something much worse.
Poland's leader warned on Sunday that the migrant crisis on its border with Belarus could be a prelude to something worse. Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki said the crisis was far from over as he toured Estonia, Lithuania and Latvia. The EU has accused Belarus of flying in thousands of people from the Middle East and pushing them to cross into the EU states in response to European sanctions. Morawiecki said the situation in Afghanistan could be utilised next.
We know of diplomatic and official contacts of Belarus and Russia with Uzbekistan and Afghanistan, and there will be an attempt to use the crisis in Afghanistan as the next stage of the migration crisis. And the migration crisis is just one part of the great political crisis in which Lukashenko, with his real principle, and I think nobody has doubts that this is President Putin, will continue such actions.
Minsk, which denies fomenting the crisis, cleared a migrant camp near the border on Thursday and started to repatriate some people to Iraq. Despite this, Poland's border guard alleges that Belarus is still transporting hundreds of migrants to the frontier. Poland's leader says things could escalate, pointing to an increased Russian military presence close to Ukraine, as well as in Belarus and Russia's Kaliningrad enclave, which borders Poland and Lithuania. A recent poll shows that more than half of Poles are worried the crisis on the border could lead to an armed conflict. Hundreds took to the street of Warsaw on Saturday to demand help for the migrants. About 10 migrants are believed to have died on the Poland-Belarus border, where a frigid winter has set in.
At least 5 people have died and over 40 have been injured after a vehicle ploughed through barricades into a holiday parade in Wisconsin. Videos posted on social media show the SUV speeding past spectators into the heart of the event, with police appearing to open fire at it.
Chelsea!
An officer did discharge his weapon at the suspect vehicle to trap the vehicle. No bystanders were injured as a result of the weapon discharge. The officer involved has up the department for 6.5 years. At this time, we do not believe there's any shots that were fired from the vehicle. We believe that officers discharged a firearm to stop the vehicle from going to the car, because the vehicle went through the barricade.
According to police, the vehicle has been recovered and a person of interest is in custody. Police say there are no further threats. Schools will not open on Monday and roads will remain closed in the area as the investigation into the incident continues.
Pues al ver las imágenes sí me impactó mucho ver toda la gente ahí, pues sangrando y gritando de terror. Ya cuando me fui acercando al lugar, también escuché como algunos disparos. Entonces la gente empezó a asustarse más, ¿verdad? Y pues a correr desesperadamente. Entonces, pues yo seguí más adelante para ver, pues sí, lo que había pasado en realidad. Y sí, pues ya mucha gente estaba lesionada ahí, tendida en el suelo, muchos lesionados. Muchos niños, desafortunadamente hubo muchos niños.
Chinese tennis star Peng Shuai has appeared in public, but concern about her well-being is not going away. Photos and videos appearing to show a smiling Peng going about her life in Beijing have surfaced on social media. That was followed by a video call between Peng and IOC President Thomas Bach, during which Peng repeatedly said that she is safe and well. But the WTA says videos released do not alleviate or address its concern about her well-being. In a statement, the tennis governing body said that the images don't change the WTA's call for a full, fair and transparent probe into the allegations of sexual assault made by Peng against former Vice Premier Zhang Gaoli.
Chinese tennis star Peng Shuai had a video call on Sunday with the president of the International Olympic Committee and told him she was safe and well, the IOC said, after Western governments expressed mounting concern for her well-being. Images of Peng at a children's tournament in Beijing published earlier in the day had done little to quell unease following a nearly 3-week public absence after she alleged that a former senior Chinese official had sexually assaulted her. In a statement, the IOC said Peng began the 30-minute call with its president Thomas Bach by thanking the Olympic organization for its concern. It added that Peng, quote, explained that she's safe and well, living at her home in Beijing, but would like to have her privacy respected at this time. Current and former tennis players from Naomi Osaka to Billie Jean King had joined the call seeking to confirm she was safe using the social media hashtag Where is Peng Shuai?
The whole community, tennis community, needs to back her up and her family and make sure that she's safe and sound.
World number one Novak Djokovic said it would be strange to hold tournaments in China unless the, quote, horrific situation was resolved. On November 2nd, Peng put on Chinese social media that former Vice Premier Zhang Gaoli had sexually assaulted her several years ago. Neither Sheng nor the Chinese government have commented on her allegation. Peng's social media post was quickly deleted, and the topic has been blocked from discussion on China's heavily censored internet. The concern over Peng came as global rights groups and others have called for a boycott of the Winter Olympics in Beijing in February over China's human rights record.
The Taliban has imposed a new rule banning female actors from appearing in television dramas. It's ordered Afghan television channels to stop showing dramas featuring women actors and said female television journalists must wear the hijab on screen. Channels are being told not to broadcast movies or entertainment programs that insult or humiliate the principle of the Sharia law. The new 8-point religious guidelines represent the latest restrictions imposed by the Taliban since their return to power. The hardline Islamist group has already introduced rules for what women can wear at university, banned most girls from attending secondary school, and imposed restrictions on women working in the civil service. The Taliban has also been criticised by global leaders for not including any female members in their cabinet.
We are bound by the rights of women that have been given by Sharia. Our sisters and mothers will be given all the rights that God has given them. Women are part of society. Women will work in various fields of the country while living under Sharia. Women will work in education, health and other fields and will play an active role.
Next to Sudan, where despite the military reinstating Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok, protests have continued. Tens of thousands of demonstrators took to the streets in multiple rallies to reject any deal involving the army and to demand the armed forces fully withdraw from the government. Security forces fired bullets and tear gas to disperse them. A 16-year-old boy was shot and killed in Omdurman, bringing the overall death toll since last month's military coup to 41. Several other people suffered gunshot wounds. Protesters denounced the deal for Hamdok's return as PM and say it's a betrayal of the revolution.
عودته وجلوسه مع القتلة خان الثورة وخان الثوار.
حمدوك حس الآن في وضع ضعيف، ما قادر يطالب بحقوق الناس، ما قادر يتكلم مع الزول القاتل لأنه قاعد معاه في نفس المكان، ما قادر يقول له أنت قاتل ومفروض تتحاسب. لكن إحنا دارين سياسيين يقدروا يبرقونا من المأزق ده، ما دارين دماء ثاني، لأن الدماء تتحقن، في نفس الوقت دارين البلد تمشي مدنية ومن غير مزيد من العنف، من غير مزيد من التصعيد.
Under the agreement, the military is promising to release all political detainees. The deal officially restores the transition to civilian rule that had been derailed by the October coup. Hamdok will lead a civilian government of technocrats for a transitional period. He says he agreed to it to avoid more casualties.
نحن دارين نحقن دماء السودانيين. أنا عارف شبابنا عندهم القدرة على التضحية والصمود وتقديم الغالي والنفيس، لكن الدم السوداني غالي. خلينا نحقن هذا الدم ونوفر طاقات هذا الشباب للبناء والتعمير.
Hamdok was placed under house arrest when the military seized power on the 25th of October. The military dissolved his cabinet and detained a number of diplomats. In what will be their first inclusion at a G7 Foreign Ministers Summit, ASEAN countries will be attending a meeting in Liverpool next month at the invitation of the United Kingdom. Representatives from South Korea, India and South Africa will attend the summit being held in Liverpool from December the 10th to the 12th. Besides addressing issues like post-COVID economic resilience, global health and human rights, the G7 summit will present for members of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations to discuss the newly formed AUKUS Pact. Some ASEAN nations are concerned the AUKUS alliance between the UK, the US and Australia could trigger a nuclear arms race. Indonesia and Malaysia in particular have criticised the AUKUS Pact. Indonesian Defence Minister Prabowo Subianto said it could lead to other countries in the Pacific attempting to acquire nuclear-armed submarines of their own, although the submarines being supplied to Australia are nuclear-powered. The Malaysian Defence Minister, Hismuddin Hussein, said the stakes are too high and that countries must set aside their egos. On Friday, the White House's Indo-Pacific coordinator Kurt Campbell acknowledged what he said was China's heartburn caused by US cooperation with the UK and Australia. Campbell says the AUKUS Pact is one of open architecture and says other countries in Asia and Europe will be expected to participate over time. China disagrees, calling the AUKUS Pact a closed and exclusive clique informed by the Cold War zero-sum mentality. In Australia, demand for camel milk has been on the rise, but male camels are often left behind after breeding. So one animal lover in Australia has taken it upon himself to foster and take care of them.
love them because of their personalities, and I love that I can come into the paddock and pat them, be with them, feed them, and yeah, just have that overall experience.
Camels are probably one of the hardest animals to have. Obviously you need strong fences, electric fencing. They do eat a lot, so these camels will eat a couple tonne a week between them.
And finally, the northern metropolis of Mosul still bears the scars of war, but the Iraqi city is slowly transitioning towards a better future. One restaurant in Mosul has robot waiters helping to serve the busy clientele. It's a sight that wouldn't have been seen when Mosul was the stronghold of the Islamic State group. We will leave you with that report. Thanks for watching.
This is something nice and civilized in the city of Mosul. I've traveled abroad and I've never seen anything like this. Not in Turkey, Jordan or Saudi Arabia. I am very happy that this service exists in the city of Mosul in terms of cleanliness, speed and prices. I hope that the idea will be adopted by all restaurants, as this is becoming my favorite restaurant in the city of Mosul.
The programming and system used in the restaurant is implemented by a group of young people from the mechatronics department of the University of Mosul. They helped us tables create software for the restaurant and set up our own server. The idea started during the COVID lockdown. As you know, people spent most of their time on social media during that period, since commuting was not allowed. So we tried to look at different ideas from around the world. And thank God we were able to execute this idea and complete this project.
Additions, right? Arab?